Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
All right, we're here with Susan Masino, another Wisconsin-based rock journalist and paranormal researcher, and all-around interesting person. How are you doing today, Susan?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for coming on. One of the reasons, you're one of the first people that we thought of when we started thinking about this podcast as someone who is interested in the same kinds of things as we are. And what's so amazing is that you're in the same town.
I know. Well, great minds think alike. And
right.
And I've been a big fan of your band Sunspot for years. So.
Thank you.
It's just an honor and a pleasure, and I know when we get together, when we see each other, that's all we kind of talk about is ghost stories, like the latest story.
That's absolutely right. Well, let's go back a little bit and to give our listeners a little bit of your history. So, Susan, number one, what got you interested in rock music and writing about it and things like that? And number two, what got you interested in the paranormal?
Okay, well, as far as the music goes, when I was born, my parents owned the Riverview Ballroom in Sauk City, Wisconsin, and they had big bands play. They had Louis Armstrong, the Dorsey Brothers, people, way before my time, but I was a baby. I was born there, and I do remember hearing the music coming through the walls. We had an apartment on the ground floor, and I remember playing in the ballroom, and I grew up that way. They owned bars and restaurants. They owned a hotel up north in Wisconsin for a while. They always had live music every weekend. And I was fascinated with that, not only the enjoyment of it, but just, watching them load in and load out and their families coming with them and the whole life, it was very romanticized to me, and I loved music. And as I got older, I figured out, I tried to play the guitar.
Okay, so you gave it a shot.
Yeah, I gave it a little bit of a shot, but I had horrible stage fright. I really, really could not do anything on stage. And so later on, I ended up hooking up with a local music paper here in Madison and started reviewing bands and interviewing people and figured out, well, that's how I can be part of the music business, is I can write about it.
Okay. Oh.
And then with the paranormal, has started very, very young. Okay. My grandmother, I used to stay at her house a lot. They lived on the lake in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. And you think, why would you tell a little kid this? But my grandmother was very open about the afterlife. She firmly believed in it. And she would tell us that when her mother died, she appeared to her in her bedroom to say goodbye to her. So she saw her apparition after her mother died, and that was it for me. I mean, I just, at that age, I wanted to know how that was possible. Was that a good or a bad thing? As soon as I could, when I got into, middle school, and there weren't a lot of books on the subject at the time. It really was kind of rough to, to find material. But I just started reading everything I could get my hands on. And I've always been fascinated, and I do tend to have prophetic dreams. I don't say I'm an out-and-out psychic, but I'm pretty psychic about a lot of things, especially, synchronicity, being in the right place at the right time, having that gut level, you need to do this right now kind of thing.
Sure,
I'm really good at that. And so I wrote a book about it that I self-published this last year called The Secrets of the Universe, Universal Laws, Past Lives, Ghost Adventures, and More. And it has 7 chapters on 7 different subjects.
And we'll definitely talk a little bit more about the Secrets of the Universe book in a minute, because it's really cool, and it's awesome that you went out and and then just so the listeners know, so the other books you've published are like biographies of AC/DC and the Hank Williams, the Hank Williams legacy family. And then didn't you also do one one about the history, like a lot of the stuff you saw in the 70s and 80s?
Yeah, I did Rock and Roll Fantasy,
That's right.
My Life and Times with AC/DC, Van Halen, Kiss, ... And that covers a 3-year period at the end of the 70s, about 77 to 1980, and actually it follows the rise of the, AC/DC and their fame, but it also includes, stories on just about everybody that came through the area at the time.
Well, speaking of bands coming through the area, now I know that when a lot of times when I hear ghost stories, and Sunspot will hear this when we go into different towns and we play in theaters, is that theaters seem to have a ton of the ghost stories. When you think like a theater, restaurant, hotel, it seems that the theater will always have the most ghost stories. And so I was just wondering if you grew up around a lot of that and your parents owned a variety of places. Did you ever have any experiences in any of the theaters that you grew up around when you were younger?
Well, not really, because I don't think I would have been aware of them.
Okay.
At the time, but definitely I know that the theaters, especially, or places where people performed, where they were the happiest, tend to be very haunted or active, because they tend to go back to where they were the happiest, and especially performers. You hear that a lot, where sadly performers that died or committed suicide, and then they will stay attached to like the last theater that they worked in, that sort of thing. So theaters are definitely a hotbed for activity.
Okay, yeah, and that's something, there's always stories about somebody killing themselves in a theater or something like that. Like, it just seems that that's the place where maybe the most expressive people are either drawn to, or it's the fact that that's where people, I think where you say with that, performers really enjoyed playing, like that's where they felt most alive.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the way you feel most alive, when you're performing and when you're in front of a crowd that loves you. And I think maybe that afterwards they want to get back to that whole feeling alive kind of thing.
Oh, definitely. And, it's not my original story, but I have a story about Buddy Holly that has something to do with that, actually, if you want to hear it.
Oh, yeah, of course I want to hear it.
Well, he played the Surf Ballroom, was his last gig the night that his plane crashed with, Richie Valens and the Big Bopper. And my two girlfriends that are psychic medium hypnotherapist Reiki masters, you definitely have to have them on your show.
Yeah, just their description is interesting enough.
Yeah, Tamara Gleason and Donette Cook, they live up north outside of Eau Claire, and they were at the Surf Ballroom one night where they have different bands. It's still open, and they still have they have a Buddy Holly anniversary every year, and they were there on a different night, and there was like a metal band. There was actually like a rock and roll heavy metal band that was playing, and there was a guy in the audience that looked exactly like Buddy Holly. And I mean, exactly. And they were laughing. They were actually giggling, amongst themselves, saying, wow, does he think he's going to pick up chicks looking like him? Or, what's the deal? And he went up to the side of the stage, and he stood on the side of the stage and watched the band for a while. And then a little while later, he was nowhere to be seen. And they thought, that's odd. We didn't see him leave or anything. We didn't see him talk to anybody. So they went and started talking to the people that work at the Surf Ballroom. And they claim they didn't want to really talk about it at first, but they claim that Buddy Holly appears at the Surf Ballroom, and if he likes the band a lot, he will go up on the side of the stage and watch them.
Oh, wow.
Then he vanishes. Then you don't see him leave. He's just gone. And I thought that was so cool when I heard that. That's one of my favorite stories because they were literally laughing at him thinking, wow, what is this guy? Is he an impersonator? Or, does he think he's going to get attention looking like that? And, the people that worked there kind of shook their heads and said, yeah, he does that. We've seen him before.
That's better than any A&R or press guy or whatever. I mean, that's somebody that likes you so much they're coming back from the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And then that was the last place he performed. So he's definitely they admitted the people that work down there, they have a lot of activity in the surf ballroom. Definitely a place that I haven't visited yet, but I would love to go.
Yeah. What do you find that now you mentioned that you have, dreams where you might have some precognitive dreams. Are you one of those people that are sensitive when they come to a place and can maybe feel things that other people can't feel? Have you ever experienced that?
Definitely, yeah. I pick up other people's feelings a lot, actually, which makes me an empath, I guess. And sometimes it's a bad thing because, if they're negative or, they're not in a good place, it's hard for me to be around them. But I definitely will go somewhere or my own house. I mean, I get teased about, I have traffic. My son is psychic also. He had, a very vivid past life memory, and he sees people. I mean, we have traffic. We just call it traffic.
Okay.
Every once in a while we sage. We have to sage the house and kind of, send people on their way and quiet it down so it doesn't spook us out too much.
And your son, he had very vivid dreams and memories and everything, all about the Titanic, right?
Yes, he did. He went through a 2-year period between the ages of 4 and 6 that he drew and painted pictures of the Titanic. He knew things about the Titanic that, we didn't even know until later on when they did documentaries on it. And we were featured on the TV show Ghost Inside My Child, their first season. And he definitely... They think he was Thomas Andrews, the lead designer of the Titanic. He is in 3D animation and concept art, so that design gene has carried over into this lifetime, and he's at peace with it now. But between 4 and 6, he had night terrors, and we had a pretty rough time for 2 years of him knowing things that no child would ever know about the Titanic, and the drawings, when you see his paintings and drawings of the ship and the intricate drawings, like the pencil, he did it like if you took the ship and cut it in half and looked at all the levels of the ship. He did one of those when he was like 4 or 5 years old that still today people are completely stunned when they see it. They're like, this is unbelievable that he could draw the Titanic from memory. He wasn't copying pictures. He was drawing it from his memory.
Well, and I think that because a lot of it, like, was he inspired when he first saw the movie, or was that one of the things that what clicked it for him?
That's what triggered it. Is we went out one night and left him with the babysitter, and Titanic, the movie, was on HBO at the time. And the babysitter watched the movie, and at the end of the movie, Jamie, my son, he was about 4, he got up and she let him sit and watch the end of the movie with her. And the next day when I found out about it, I was like, oh my God, why would you let a 4-year-old, watch all these people drown?
I saw that movie when I was 22, and that was a little much. That was intense for me,
Oh, exactly, yeah. So I was not happy when I first heard that, but the next day, it wasn't. It was just not the reaction that you would expect. He was like he had remembered the Titanic, and he started talking about it, and he loved to draw anyway. He was always, he had a little art table. He drew all the time, and within the first 2 weeks, he literally drew and painted probably 50 pictures of the Titanic.
Oh, and wow.
He just kept doing that. He kept doing that over and over again, like different sections of the ship, the inside, the outside, it cracking in half, And then as it got more intense, he started having night terrors where he'd go to sleep and within an hour you could hear him, and all of a sudden he'd be up and he'd be running like he was trying to find a way out. He would run. You'd have to make sure he didn't fall down the stairs, and he would be in a panic. He wouldn't know you. He wouldn't see you. And the doctor advised us, his doctor said, well, don't, shake him out of it. Try to calm him down, make sure he doesn't hurt himself, and just kind of ride it out with him.
Sure.
Well, this went on for 2 years, and he was more and more talking about the accident itself, how it shouldn't have happened, and how they rushed the building of the ship. The ship was made of iron; it should have been made of steel. The door, when they hit the iceberg, the doors in the boiler rooms closed, emergency doors closed, and the men were trapped. And he was like 5, and he used to cry over that. And he used to say, oh, Mama, it shouldn't have happened. It wasn't fair. It shouldn't have happened. And I said, well, I know, honey, it was awful. And he says, no, you understand. You don't understand. It shouldn't have happened that way. And he was drawing pictures of the ship, and it's got, the 4 big smokestacks.
Right.
And he would draw smoke out of only 3 of them. And one day I asked him, I said, why is there no smoke coming out of this smokestack? And he's like, he looked, and he was so matter-of-fact about this, it was kind of comical. He looked at me and he says, it's not real, Mom. It's a dummy stack. And I said, what do you mean a dummy stack? And he said, it was just for show. They didn't need it. They didn't use it. So it was a dummy stack. It's not real. And that's true. It ended up being true. That the one smokestack was just for show. It was not used.
And that's crazy how he would even know that.
Oh, yeah, he was 5. He was 5, and he knew it.
Right, a dummy stack. Okay.
Yeah, a dummy. That's a dummy stack, Mama. And he acted to me like, get with the program, lady. So, yeah, it was really intense, and he grew through it. And now when he remembers it, I thought it was very sweet at the end of the show when they asked him how he felt about it or what he could remember of it. He doesn't really remember the night terrors or any of that, luckily, but he said that he remembers the Titanic being as familiar to him as his house was.
Oh, that's, and I think that's, that inspires me to think of another topic for a podcast sometime of people whose past live memories have been triggered by seeing something happen in a movie. Like if it's a Civil War or it's a World War II or something like that, where they see something happen in a movie and they're like, I think that happened to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot of kids now. The Ghost Inside My Child now is in their 2nd season, and the stories are just amazing to me. I thought my son with the Titanic was amazing, but every week I'm blown away by these kids and what they remember.
Have you ever been regressed for a past life?
I haven't been
hypnotized and everything?
But, well, they try. They try to work on me. My girlfriends do. But literally, and, I'm kind of outing myself. I don't talk about this very much. But when I was a kid, I knew that I had been here before. I didn't know the word reincarnation. I didn't know what it meant. But when I was a kid, I used to tell my girlfriends in grade school, because I remember them laughing at me, I said, I was a comedy actress in the 1930s, and I died in a plane crash. And they all looked at me like, yeah, okay. Nobody really talked about it. Nobody asked me about it. And when I got into my 20s, and that's a lot of times when it's triggered if it doesn't come out when you're a kid, it seems like when you start getting into your early 20s, I started really missing all these things, like people from the 20s and 30s and that lifestyle. And so I went to the library and I looked up a comedy actress that was famous in the 30s that died in a plane crash, and I came across Carol Lombard. And everything kind of fell into place. And she was married to Clark Gable, and I believe that if I wasn't her, I was her maid or something.
I was Carol Lombard's maid in the past life.
Yeah, I could have been. I could have been her maid, and I wasn't really her. But there are so many similarities between the two of us, and I remembered like a ring I always wanted, a certain diamond ring for years. I used to talk about it. And then one day I actually found a picture of her wearing that ring. And it just, it really blew me away.
Wow.
And I've had so many different things, that have been brought up now over the years, and her and I were very much alike. She, swore like a sailor. She was, one of the first female actresses in Hollywood to represent herself. She fired her agent and wouldn't belong to the studio system like everybody else did. She was quite a woman that only really goes down in history as being married to Clark Gable, and someday I'd love to do like a movie about her, because she was hilarious.
Well, there's much more to her than obviously just being Clark Gable's wife.
Oh, much more. Yeah, she was a trailblazer in her day.
Well, that's all. I'm always interested in, because I've never had anything like that. Where I just know something. I've had some weird things, but never in that feeling of, like, well, that feeling of familiarity. And so when I talk to people that have, I always am fascinated, because I just wonder what would that, that the deja vu in strange situations, and then discovering, when you discover you have this missing a lifestyle from the 1920s, that's, I think for someone like me, it's hard to relate to, because it's like, oh, I'm still missing the 1980s, but I was alive. And so that's awesome.
Well, yeah, and it's quite sad too, because I remember, crying over things I didn't know why I was crying over. I was just very, very sad. Like I went through a whole period of about a year that I just, that's when it all came back to me. And talk about weird synchronicity. Right after we came out on TV with the Titanic story, The Ghost Inside My Child, I love to watch Ghost Adventures with, Zach, Nick, and Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
Love all those shows. And I recorded, I record them and I watch them later on at night, because I usually write during the evening, so I'm usually watching the shows later on. And they opened their season, this last season, their opening show. I had it on, I recorded it. I sat down and I started watching it, and it was about Carol Lombard's plane crash.
Oh.
And they went to the site, which is in Nevada, because they stopped to fuel in Las Vegas, took off about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I think the guy, I don't know if the pilot was like trying to take a shortcut or whatever he did, he flew right into the side of a mountain and killed everybody on the plane, including Carol. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that there was anything left of this. This was 1942. We're talking many
right.
years ago. And the saloon keeper's kid, because the Pioneer Saloon where Clark Gable waited for the bodies to be brought down from the mountain, still stands, and they have a big tribute room to her and Clark Gable. And Nick and the saloon keeper's kid actually climbed down to where the plane crashed, and there's still pieces of the plane, including the engine and everything.
Oh, wow.
And when I saw that, I physically got sick. I thought, I was really sick to my stomach. I didn't realize in a million years that there'd be any traces left of the actual plane.
Well, right after 70 years.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it. Actually, there's pieces all over the side of the mountain still. Which, made me mad, because it should be in a museum, damn it.
Right. You're like, hey, that's my plane.
I know. Some of my luggage might still be up there.
Well, a few minutes ago, we discussed sensitivity towards people and emotions, and that kind of, that extra sense of, being exposed to people around you, whether it's negative or it's positive emotions. Now, you've interviewed and spent some time with a lot of different bands over the years. And what would you say? Is there anyone that struck you that you traveled with this band or you interviewed this guy and you're like, this guy is it was later revealed how negative he was, or that it's like as the band member said he was a jerk or whatever, and you're like, no, I felt that when he was in the room. Is there any example of maybe somebody where their presence, there's people whose presence obviously lifts everybody up and everything, and so I want to get an example of that. But is there any example of anybody whose presence, is supernaturally bad that you might have interviewed back in the day?
Oh my gosh, I would say more of an arrogance than being bad.
Okay.
Because like the guys in Angel, for example,
okay,
were extremely arrogant. When AC/DC opened for Aerosmith, and they seem to be lovely people now, but at the time, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler were pretty messed up.
Well, yeah, they were needle fiends at the time. I mean,
yeah. So they didn't want to pose for pictures, and I had to kind of coerce them into doing it. Mm. So when I heard later on, because I had no idea, what they were into then. When I found out later, or another example too, like Ace Frehley and Peter Criss from Kiss, they were definitely on the wrong road when I met them. And then Peter Criss, God bless him now, he's recovered and he's doing better, but he was very negative, very, very actually mean to be around.
Oh.
And, but they were pretty messed up at the time. And when they left the band, I was not surprised when they did, because I knew that, Gene and Paul were, totally straight and very businesslike, and Peter and Ace were, doing everything they could get their hands on it.
Right.
Aw, man, don't you hate it when they do that to you? Well, we're very sorry to do that to you, but Susan just had too much cool stuff to talk about for us to try to cram it into one episode. The good news, though, is you only have to wait one day for the rest of the interview, because episode 5 will be out tomorrow, and maybe even sooner than then, depending on when you downloaded this. So please check back for part 2 of the interview with Susan Masino. And in the meantime, show notes for today's episode are at othersidepodcast.com/4.
And since I talked with Susan today about some of her favorite 70s rock stars, here's Sunspot's ode to our favorite classic rock heroes, Saturday Night Gospel.
Yeah, we've been playing since rock was on cassettes, and the girls teased their bangs with oceans of Aquanet. We hung out in parking lots, learned to smoke cigarettes, and we canonized all the rocker guys. I used to high-speed dub my tapes for all my friends. 10 years on with Napster, yeah, we did it all again. We'd preach to the country heathens who never understood those reasons why I always wore a concert shirt. And every Saturday night we went to church, and we sang, Amen, my friend, hallelujah. Don't you take that name in vain. Praise the Lord with the sound, baptize me until I drown. Let a choir of fallen angels sing my name. For I do believe the song remains the same. We haven't changed, and there were mullets just as far as the eye can see. My blessed virgin looked just like Debbie Harry. Oh, we prayed, yeah, we prayed at the houses of the holy. And just like John Lennon, we all were bigger than, you know. I used to high-speed dub my tapes for all my friends. 10 years on with Napster, yeah, we did it all again. We'd preach to the country heathens heathens who never understood those reasons why I always wore a concert shirt. And every Saturday night we went to church, and we sang, Amen, my friend, hallelujah. Don't you take that name in vain. Praise the Lord with the sound, baptize me until I drown, and let a choir of fallen angels sing my name. For I do believe the song remains the same. We haven't changed. We've been playing since rock was on cassettes, and the girls tease their bangs with oceans of Aquanet. We hung out in parking lots and learned to smoke cigarettes, and we canonized all the rocker guys, and we sang Amen, my friend, hallelujah. Don't you take that name in vain. Sing my name, and we sing Amen, my friend, hallelujah. Don't you take that name in vain. Praise the Lord with the sound, baptize me until I drown. Let the choir of fallen angels sing my name. For I do believe the song remains the same. We haven't changed.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.